All right, everybody, welcome to the show. I have a guest here, and I talked to him on Instagram about a few things, and I was really interested in a lot of the things that he had to say. It sounded like there was a lot that he had to say. So I asked him if he would come on here, and he agreed. So without further ado, I'll let him introduce himself to everybody.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Name's Brendan Green, aka Star Force Double H, and Freemason, one of the most connected in the world. Thank you, my man.
Yeah, so you say you're a Freemason. What, are you allowed, what degree are you, or whatever that is?
So I'm a third. So first, there's only a third degree as Master Mason. That's where you're accepted globally in what we call a Blue Lodge. But then there's concordant bodies. So, for instance, you have the York Rite, which goes up to 14 more degrees, and of course, Knights Templar, which I'm a member of all of those. And then you have the Scottish Rite, which goes up to the 32nd degree. And then the 33rd degree is invite only. So I'm on the list for 33rd. I'm a 32nd degree Mason, third degree Blue Lodge, and then Knights Templar as well, which it all has its roots in the ancient Solomon stories.
Yeah. That's really interesting to me because I've heard a lot about that. I've heard about like the York Rite and the Scottish Rite and all that sort of stuff, but and the Blue Lodges, and I've heard a little bit about the Knights Templar, but I don't really know too much about it. I know Assassin's Creed made like a whole big deal out of it, but before that, I didn't really even know what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, ironically, the Knights Templar and Freemasonry are tied intricately. The Templars were really the world's first bank. And during the Crusades, what they did was they provided travel, safe travel to Jerusalem. And then, of course, the final battle was fought between the Ottoman Empire, Salah ad-Din, and the Knights Templar. And then Friday the 13th is synonymous because the knights were killed off that day and burned at the stake. Jacques de Molay was at the time the Grand Master. He was a childhood friend of the King of France. And then the other childhood friend of the King of France was the Pope, who was talked into getting rid of the Templars, which basically got rid of the debt that was owed. So all of Europe was paying the Templars for protection through the Crusade Wars. It's really crazy because going not off the subject a little, but there's a story that's going to break in the next couple of weeks. My buddy Scott Walter, who I was on his show America on Earth actually a couple times, he found a first person scroll of Jesus Christ, and the rumor is that Jesus escaped to Scotland, and that there was a bloodline, of course, protected. This ties into a lot of these books that were written in the early thousands about the same. But who knows if it's true or not? But they broke down all of the schematics and symbolism to the scroll that was found. It was found in the Adirondacks, and the theory with Scott Walter is that the Templars, after they were killed off, escaped and came to the United States. Which there's quite a bit of evidence that points to that. It's a really intricate story. And then tying the whole story is the Essenes. They were a certain sect of Hebrews that basically were responsible for the Dead Sea Scrolls and were a warlike section under John the Baptist. In Freemasonry, we herald John the Baptist. So there's a lot that ties historical value to Masonry and history. In fact, the United States, 13 presidents were Masons. All of the signers of the Declaration of Independence and 14 of the signers of the Constitution were Freemasons. It's just wild stuff. And I became a Mason because I actually came across when I was a conspiracy guy. Not that I don't believe in them now, but back then in my early 20s, I had the like of meeting William Cooper, who wrote Behold the Pale Horse. And I was like, wow, this book's wild. Now, of course, everything in the book has come true, like 99% of it. So I met him at a book signing, and we were actually debating his theory that JFK was shot by the limo driver. In the original Zapruder film is like 3 seconds where it looks like he shoots JFK, but it's not the truth. What happened was he turned his head, and you can see in the new videos, the 4K, that it's like the sliver of the curb passing as he turned, and it just happened to look like a pistol. So I was able to prove that to him in some high-end visual that we had at the time I was building websites. And the man launched me into becoming a Mason because I wanted to see how I could crack all these secrets.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
So like so how long ago was that? Like how long have you been in the Masons?
So I've been a Freemason since the late '90s, and I always studied history. Ever since I was involved, with high school and got out and wanted to learn more, traveling. And it's amazing, man. And when I got in, I found that although there's a lot of accolades and things to do within brothers, we kind of can't come to the conclusion of who's going to make the ham sandwich for what we call coalition after a meeting. Such as, if you look, very similar to the Congress and legislative branch of the United States. It's almost identical to that. So,
Yeah, I've heard
yeah,
people
the
make
speaker,
jokes like that before. Yeah.
yeah, the speaker would be the master, and the concordant body of Masons would be the people assembled. Um, but yeah, it's very, very similar. In fact, the Freemasonic constitutions was the prerequisite for our Constitution. It was written about 80 years before our Constitution was signed. So there's a very heavy influence there. No question about it.
So yeah, I've heard that like 13 presidents were Freemasons. Like I'm not sure which ones it was. I don't know if you know offhand which ones.
Yeah, I know quite a bit of them. George Washington, Ben Franklin wasn't president, but he was a Mason. FDR was a Mason. The list goes on and on. Now, just to separate, it's not skull and bones because that gets conflated a lot with conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
Skull and Bones is a launching pad for politicians. There's no question about that. But as an example, there's no prerequisite to be to be in Skull and Bones as by being a Freemason first. Whereas I'm in the Shrine as well. It's the Shriners. You have to be a Freemason to get into the Shrine. You have to be a Freemason to get into the Templars. Whereas the good old boys club, the Yales and the Harvards, and those groups like Skull and Bones, the prerequisite is, of course, being rich already, right?
Yeah.
Um, but there is quite a bit of historical value of these guys going, like a shot right into the realms of politics.
Yeah, like George Bush, I think, was the biggest one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I heard a
yeah. The
lot
guy
about
that
that.
you've been around, he used to make his own words up and shit. I'd be dying laughing at his pressers and stuff.
Yeah. So like, okay, so you were telling me, I think you were talking to me about, you said something about how like people like the thing that's going on with China and Iran and Venezuela and all of that, like that people have been thinking about that like years in advance or something like that.
Yeah. So I was involved with a think tank almost 20 years ago, where literally everything you've seen happen is now coming to fruition. And what they wanted to do was have North America, South America, Canada, and Central America under an Amero system, which would have basically became the new dollar. And they wanted to maybe back it with some type of digital form of currency, but it was yet to be discussed of what that is. And then not too long after that, Bitcoin comes along. Now, Now, I will not tell someone don't invest in digital, but you got to be careful with the altcoins because a lot of them are just rug pulls. As an example, like with Dogecoin, I made a lot of money. It went up to like 78 cents. I bought it at pennies. And then after it came back down, I day traded it. And even now, it's up and down. You could still make money there. But it started off as a joke, the Dogecoin. Whereas Bitcoin is actually, it's actually mined on computer systems. Intrinsic value of the originators is still sitting and hold, and no one knows who owns it. So the fear now is, what if it's China or Russia or an adversary? And then once we become so invested into it, in other words, if we use that to back our dollar, it would be a hell of a problem if all of a sudden it just went defunct, which happens all the time with all. The end game is this. Ronald Reagan in the 80s wanted to get the communists out of South America. and they were going after them with tier one assets, right? And then Congress, like you see now, pulled the purse string back. And that single handedly created the entire drug war. Because now what they did was they used the Sandinistas and the CIA and Coke money to fund these paramilitary groups that were being trained to fight against the communists. And this has been happening since Kennedy, actually. The entire Bay of Pigs, you know, it all stems from that. Everything has always been the CIA is involved, there's drug market involved. And it's funny enough, when I first met Freeway Rick Ross, who, of course, I know Rick Ross, the rapper, too. I'm in one of his videos, but he took the ideal and identity of Freeway Ross as his rap, stage name. But Freeway Ross was working for the CIA and didn't even know it. And what happened was there was a guy that was a DEA agent named Kiki Camarena who in the 80s found the CIA airstrip while he was looking for a weed deal. And at the time, the Mexican cartels they weren't involved with cocaine. It was just weed. So when this guy Kiki found the CIA runway, that was the runway sending the weapons to the Sandinistas and paramilitary groups. And on those same C-132 planes, the cocaine would come back to the United States. And drug dealers like Freeway Ross were directly involved with that. Even the movie American Made with Tom Cruise is the story of Barry Seal, and it's the same story. The CIA was using him to bring drugs to Escobar. It's just so convoluted. But the end game truly was to air and get rid of the communists that they saw as a direct threat ever since, the McCarthy hearings even. It's a very real thing. And if you can look no further now than the colleges, they damn near succeeded, right? The mindset of the progressive liberal is infected with communism at its core. And and so it was ends justifies the means. And I'm by no means am trying to say that allowing drug sales to pay for the secret wars was beneficial. But if it led to this exact moment, to where a Trump could go in and take Maduro out, seize control of Venezuela, cut the hemisphere exactly in half, which is all done now.
Yeah.
And they're going to do this to Cuba. Cuba will be weeks away, it looks like, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And it had to happen because what was happening was the communists were, slowly drifting into the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine one morning and there were Scud missiles and ICBMs on the coast of South America pointed right at DC, So it's basically called silent weapons for dirty wars. And a lot of people, the division that's happening now where they say, well, Trump is now, breaking what he said he was running on. That's not true. America first cannot ever mean isolationists. You
Yeah.
can't be isolated. And that's where the Nick Fuenteses, the Can douchebags, all these people, the Massies that have kind of defected, really never were truly for Trump anyway. They
Yeah.
harbor racism and deep hate. These are the same people that would go after some of our great Black American friends on Instagram that are great public media people. They'd be racist against them if they could, but they can't now because, a third of the vote was from the American Black for Trump this time. And it's very evident how conservative those men and women are, the American Blacks within our movement, It's just real interesting to watch how people change, as times ebb and flow. Whereas what they should be doing is looking at the long term, which is the successful recreation of the United States and eliminating anyone having to depend on us. The fringe benefits are done. That lady was charged. The trial for the lady in Minnesota, they aired it out today, found guilty. And of course, everything that Nick Shirley exposed is live on TV, and the regular media is not covering it. This is all over major news, So it's just interesting times that we're in, where our influence, yours and mine, and other people like us, many times have better and more accurate news. Like, see how you followed up last week? Remember with the Tulsi Gabbard story?
Yeah.
You immediately followed up with, by the way, this happened previously. I wanted to clear that up. The regular media doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
If they get
Exactly.
it wrong, back and reconcile it. And I think that because you hold yourself personally accountable, right? You
Yeah.
want the people that that are coming to your algorithm, to your feed, to have the best version of what you're putting out there.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
that's
know?
exactly what it is. It feels like the news media, they just lack integrity anymore. They just don't. And I guess a lot of it really is that they're just purposefully trying to be a propagandized network. They're intentionally trying to misinform and indoctrinate people, yellow journalism, and being used by intelligence agencies and everything else under the sun, really. But yeah, I think it's exactly that, isn't it? Like the people have become really, the people are becoming the only people that really tell the truth anymore. And without them, we just can't really, you can't really do anything. And that's why social media censorship is such a big issue too. Like it's just a crazy thing.
Yeah. Well, you bring that up, it leads right into a topic of discernment. You know, one of the things that happened to me was I was able to get on TV, A&E history, travel on the show America on Earth with Scott Walter, who, by the way, became a Freemason because of myself, and now he's probably very popular amongst people that don't like Masonry and also people that are for it. But when I got on TV, my social media exploded. My Twitter was at over 500,000. Plus, I dabble in the music business, right? But when people found out I was engaged with the Trump family and all for Trump, they just totally disengaged with me. So I stopped using X, right? Instagram was at 440,000. Again, this TV show was getting millions of views every time it aired. Even now, it airs at like every other Sunday on Travel. So it still gets to this day people that have seen me on that show. And you shouldn't have to be oppressed as a conservative. I mean, that's a problem in the United States, if you ask me, right? When Elon bought X, I went back and rebuilt, and it was down in like the low 40s. I bought it back to 166. This Instagram account was in the 60s. Now I'm at 116. And it's all about consistency and finding our pack, our tribe, kind of like minded, right? But that brings into effect and cause the possibility of ill discernment. Like, in other words, look at these people that believe everything anti Israel is the way it has to be from them hearing it third party 10 times removed, when actually the single most best ally we have is Israel. And if they knew the history, they would know anyone that studies history, especially biblical, Jesus Christ was not creating a new covenant. He was there to say, this is the right covenant of God, and I am the Messiah. So this whole Christianity thing, which no knock to them because I am Christian, but every Protestant version and Methodist and Lutheran and Episcopalian were created because they didn't like the version before, much like today's music trends, right? And and Protestant was started because the king could not get a divorce from the Pope, so the two excommunicated each other. Then Constantine takes only four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then you got these retards. Well, I didn't know there's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in those times. And meanwhile, they're translations, right? They're not actual, right? This is how crazy people think. They don't know what they're
Yeah,
talking about.
really.
But what that is, controlled religion is in fact very much controlled, right? And even within the Jewish faith, which I'm adept to because I build in Brooklyn. First, I worked for an all-Israeli firm. And the first time I met these guys, I'm from upstate New York originally, Catskills, Sullivan County, and all the Hasidics go up there. It's called the Jewish Alps. So I'm popping jokes like I'm from the Jewish Alps, the Messiah's coming. And these guys from Israel are looking at me like I got 12 heads because I don't know the disconnect that
Mhm.
the guys in Israel that are secular or don't practice faith, they're in the IDF, they're in the military, and they look down on some of the Orthodox that don't have to serve in
Yeah.
Israel. So I concluded there was this stretch between the two, right? But you do learn it, of course. And what I found is that the work ethic is bar none, and it shows when you create 300 fucking pages, mind my French, that blow up all at the same time. You have a touch of brilliance,
Yeah.
and this was a tactic the Israelis used against terrorists like 8 months ago or so. So suffice to say, what the United States is doing is using Israel as the tip of the spear. And this should have been done a decade or two ago in regards to Iran. And that's the final piece. to basically garnering about 90% of the world's oil control through the United States. And
Yeah.
that single piece put a snub to what would have been a New World Order, which of course brings me back to Bill Cooper's book, Behold the Pale Horse, because it was discussed in that book. Um, and at the same time, we still have enemies amongst us. I mean, our enemies are here, both in politically charged terrorism. Bill Ayers, one of Barack Obama's biggest supporters, was a convicted terrorist. You know, so they don't even know why they're mad. They're mad at the fact that they feel snubbed, maybe. Somehow in their mind, they think that, AI PAC's robbing everybody. But the fact is, AI PAC are American citizens and it's not illegal. And if you want to change, then you need to get your congressmen and senators to make a law against the lobbying, because those bastards are taking millions and billions in giant super PAC lobby money that completely dwarf AI PAC's 30 million that they made last year. So it's incredibly scary how misinformed people are, to say the least.
To say the least, really, like that's an drastic understatement. Like they are completely misinformed. They have no idea what's going on at all whatsoever. And anytime you try to tell them what's going on, they always accuse you of being the propagandist, because mainstream news media accuses anything that disagrees with their propaganda as being propagandist. Like it's really crazy. And so, like what you were saying about, okay, about how the communists are infiltrated in America, our enemies are already here. That's extremely true. Do you feel like how indebted do you think that they are into the United States of America?
They're way in there, bro. I'll tell you something. There's a book called Rise of the Fourth Reich by Jim Marrs. Jim Marrs has since passed away, but he was a conspiracy guy, but the book was spot on. And what he said in this book was that America would become the rise of the Fourth Reich, possibly due to the SS actually escaping, right? In other words, Hitler was in Argentina, and by the way, they're blonde hair and blue eyes with dark skin. There's bunkers, there's U-boats, they found everything. The V2 rocket was going to space almost already. In fact, we'll get into the UFO stuff in a minute, but the same propellant and rocketry that Elon is going on SpaceX to this day is directly attributed to Hitler's reign.
Mm.
And so the United States and Russia split those scientists in half and each got half and half, to say the least, right? So this war's been happening since World War II. And what they've done is each powerful country suppresses the technology, except it's getting harder and harder with AI and how fast the communication ebbs and flows. But they've been coming here, all of our enemies, because the United States is free. In essence, if you have a kid and you're from anywhere else in the world and that kid's born on a United States territory, they are a citizen. And that's coming up in front of SCOTUS real soon. And I think that they're going to go against it, as they should. I'm not saying that we don't want citizens, but there's particularly billionaires that are coming here with 58 kids already, bro,
Yeah.
using our system. That our system, our scams, everything that's happening with Medicare, daycare, hospice, it's all scams. You set up a place, you got 3 people sick in your family. They're at their house. You get money for the house, and now you start billing for like 90 people in 2 months, and no one's checking it.
Yeah.
And that's the scam. And so, because it's not a crime if you don't get caught, it's easy to hide out in plain sight amongst your peers. So, for an example, in Texas, there's a big thing going on where they want to build up their own city and have Sharia law. It's being fought against, but they don't even need it to pass to have, because they already have that. In Brooklyn right now, there's Sharia police driving around with blue and white cars that you'd mistake for NYPD right now.
Yeah.
So they already have it because they're operating within the means of constitutionality, just like the lobbyists also have rights, and the companies that are there, whether it's Nike, whether it's Ethereum, DuPont, it doesn't matter. company has the same rights we have. So the idea has been taught downhanded from the professors who were basically Marxists on the communist side. And now it's an easy blend for these lefties to kind of coagulate, if you will, with the extremities of Islam. And that's why you see the broke Reich, the broke right woke losers. They are actually fascists themselves because what they're willing to do is Fuentes says, I'm going to be a Democrat now. Don't vote for Trump. Right. But why would you get that fast? If you truly were against the communism you just spoke against 6 months ago, right? So this is the problem is that the young mind is malleable, meaning it's foldable, holdable. You can make them do what they want, what you want as an agency, and it's easy to make kids and young people think that somehow they're brandishing a better fight for humanity. But at the end of the day, once you hit about 38, you realize that in order to keep your job, you can't be out protesting wearing tear gas helmets. So that's what's happened to the United States. Our own blessings have come home to roost. And there's many reasons for that. I think one of the reasons is that our presidency is too short. I'm all for I'm for 8-year terms for president because at least like there was a couple good things that Biden signed that like you keeping some of the Trump effect stuff in that was good. And so when a president changes hands, things that are working should have to stay in place. As an example, I can't stand Obamacare, but if you were to gut it right now, it would topple. And Trump knows that. So they need to replace it with something substantially better. But what he didn't do is immediately write an executive order eliminating it because he knows that what I just said is the truth. So, and leading back into the discernment issue, people are confusing cognitive, uh, critical thinking for confirmation bias. And so they can't unsee it once much like Will Cooper, like I told you about the gun that he showed in the original Zapruder film, he couldn't unsee it until I was able to show him a brand new descaled version with a like 300 DPI, and this is why it's not the way you saw it, Bill. People need to go to space to believe that the Earth's not flat. I mean, it's really, and they can say to you, "Well, no, you're this because of this," and I'm critically because I think that every jet's making chemtrails. But okay, if that's true, where are the engines exhaust? Because if what you're saying is true, that every jet is spitting chemicals out, then where are the engine exhausts? So they don't have engines? Like there's no critical thinking actually there. And if they would just opine on that for a little bit, they would come to the conclusion that not everything you see the first time is exactly what you might think it is.
Which seems like it would make common sense just as like a life lesson. Like you do that in your everyday life all the time. You think you would already realize something like that. But, I guess that is what it is too. People, it's just what they assume it's confirmation biased. You cannot stand by what is actually the truth because it's so heavily propagandized without people assuming that you're just trying to make sure that your side is right. It's like, I could lie, and that would be the only way that doesn't work. I can't do that though. So, it's a really crazy thing. I was also going to ask you, like, what do you think about Alex Jones?
I'm not a fan at all, bro.
Yeah.
First, yeah, I was gonna be on his show. He didn't like. They give you like a questionnaire. Um, it was his grandfather was the Grand Master of the Texas Masonic Lodge, and he denied that for years and is completely anti-Mason. Although a broken clock is correct twice a day, and there are several things that he said that did come to fruition, so I would never knock him for that. But the things that we could clearly debate on, he's afraid of a guy like me. And then it's so funny you bring that up. About 6 months ago, when my Instagram started picking up, some guy I put a post up, and I don't like sometimes if a post is viral, I don't even have time to comment back to everybody, bro. You know how it gets. But I'll try to get into the most pointed ones because some of this shit's funny as hell. like some of the one-liners and things people say. It's great. But I had this post that went viral, and it was about all the things that the can douchebags and everybody are getting wrong. And this guy said, "Hey, would you want to debate a woke right tonight?" And I said, "Sure," but I didn't know it was him, and I didn't know he commented. So we get on the show and we start talking about Freemasonry, and I could tell right away that he's completely skewed to the point where he hates Trump now, right? And the earth is flat, and I'm a jerk off because of the symbolism and masonry, the whole nine. So I said, "Listen, bro," I said, "let's do this. Let's have a baseline of what we can agree on, right? And this way your audience can at least discern." This is back to the discernment, right? Is a circle 360 degrees and around, right? And he got all offended at me. I said, "I'm not trying to play you, bro." He goes, "You're trying to play with your mace." I said, "No, I want to have a baseline of facts that we can definitely agree on, so that everybody knows that we're polarized one way or the other. But these facts that we can say, these are facts." So then I asked him about the rectangle, and I said, "Is it true that it has four sides, 90-degree corners, with two top equal parallel bars and two side parallel bars?" And he's like, "Fuck you, this conversation's over," and he hung up on me. I wasn't trying to play him. I was trying to show a baseline of somewhere we can agree that people can at least ascertain that these guys can be normal in some way. I thought he was completely ridiculous with the Alex Jones stuff. So again, I don't hate the guy. I just dislike some of what he spewed, especially with the Columbine stuff. Excuse me, with the Sandy Hook stuff. I happen to know one of the fathers up there that lost his kid. A friend of mine was at the funeral. Bro, I'm not buying that it was faked, and I'm all for having the discussion that there are crisis actors for plenty of situations. We're not going to disagree that there are conspiracies, but when you're so hardened on it, and then it ruined your entire show, I'd say that's pretty prolific. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I never thought that the Sandy Hook thing was fake because I had known on good account that like people, like those kids definitely were murdered. So
Yeah,
it's like, and I think the same, like there's crisis actors for whatever situations. And I'm not even really sure totally what he had said, whether he was saying the whole thing was fake or whether he had said that he thought the government did it, but it was real or whatever it was. I'm not really sure how he had said it. But I see what you're saying, though. I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were on Alex Jones because I know Alex, when it comes to conspiracies, that's like the biggest name that's out there. And you see people have all sorts of different theories about him. And so and now I guess people are saying that he's part of the woke right too, because he's really been going against Trump and Israel as well, right?
absolutely. Here's the bottom line with this stuff with geopolitics. The United States is never going to not be an ally with Israel ever. Not now, not in a million years. So anybody that's against it and wants to be America first, isolationism, they're not even in the same realm as us, bro. They don't even deserve to have a platform. And I'll destroy anybody, like literally tear them to pieces, because we can come back to the circle. We can come back to the rectangle. We agree on these, then you show me why it would be smart to defriend Israel and let the Middle East become a fucking war chaotic zone. And we should ignore that. First of all, we caused half of it, right? We can't ever walk away. The entire Iran thing is a comeback, see you later, gotcha.
That's
This
true.
is an absolute partly retribution mission, and people are remiss with complete ridiculousness uh, to think that we weren't going to do something at some point. Even Obama, if he didn't get that deal, Obama, first of all, was the deporter in chief, the drone in chief. He killed a United States citizen with a fucking predator drone.
Mm,
I don't want to hear shit. Like,
mm.
these guys need to, and women, they need to get their facts straight before they just say something. And it really irks me because a lot of people don't know the history when it comes to Hamas. From 2004 to 2007, you had still quite a bit of mini battles between Israel and the terrorists in Gaza. But after 2007, there was zero terrorist attacks, zero IDF attacks, nothing. It was completely under the hammer. the steel fist and the velvet glove of Hamas. They were building tunnels, hiding their weapons. They were getting ready for the next time of attack, right? It is true in the West Bank that there were skirmishes because there are groups of families that do take land that's on zoned Palestinian area, and that maybe should be arbitrated, but it has nothing to do with we should kill each other, right? So this idea that the Jews caused it and that Hamas was defending themselves is completely ridiculous because on October 8th in New York City at fucking Columbia, every protester had the same sign, the same balloon, the same tent, right? The same call signs with words that they're ebbing and flowing. It was planned. And I could tell you from being in the music business, you don't just have a logo made up and it's approved the next day. Like you ever see those banners at the red carpet? They're called a step and retreat. That thing goes through 3 approvals before it gets printed because if it's printed wrong, you're going to be screwed with the money. So all this stuff, they were sitting in vans and storage ready to go, bro. They planned it. And here's how it
Yeah.
was planned. When Biden gave Iran that $53 billion back that was frozen from the
Mm-hmm.
first Trump admin, they took it and funded Hamas because they were betting and hedging that Russia was going to win in the Ukraine, which, by the way, that war started actually in 2014. And if you go to X right now and type in Star Force HH and Russia, you will find me talking about how even MH370 might have been tested with a hypersonic by Russia.
Mm.
So I've been calling Russia out as one of the biggest problems for the United States for a long time.
Yeah.
And by the way, in 2009 through 2011, Paul Begala, who at the time was with the DNC, was in the Ukraine helping usurp pro-Russian separatists.
Mm.
Admin saw Ukraine was, we're going to get you right up to being part of NATO as our democratic value in that part of the world, in that continent. And it all backfired tremendously because while all that was happening, we violated all these NATO laws and stipulations from World War II. Now, Russia exposed himself because this moron is from Russia and he's going to take his tanks down into a thaw out in the Ukraine and wonder why his tanks got stuck in the mud. So what happened was it exposed how bad Russia actually is in a bad position.
Yeah.
And Iran's the proxy of Russia, and Russia is the proxy of China. So all this comes down to stop China from dominating us, which they were very close to doing. And just to scale it back a little bit so people understand, the F-35 and F-22 we've had for about a decade. China just put theirs out over the last 3 years. So what they do is they steal our technology and then clone us.
Yeah.
And that's why even with the UAP and UFO stuff, 90% of that stuff is us and China for sure.
Mm.
Because if you go right now, go to the files, go to the what do you call it, war.gov site, and you'll notice like 20% of the last 10, 15 episodes were in the Middle East, bro, since 2020.
Yeah.
Basketball size orbs, they're fucking the pill, which is the Tic Tac. Now, I'm not saying that it's not UFO technology or that it could even be UFOs, but I find it funny that why not use it in a war zone? Because those people are so desensitized to seeing so much catastrophe
Yeah.
for the last 20 years, they're not going to think anything other than it's us or some other war. So what I'm getting at is there's silent weapons for deadly wars, and if we weren't taking dynamic control of them, we'd be last. So taking the hemisphere, the United States is going to forge a Middle Eastern pact with us, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, parts of North Africa, and that's that. And then we're going to ebb our way out of NATO. And that goes into, by the way, because we need to have a force ready to go at the midpoint. And that's it. We need to be, I'm not saying an empire, but we have to have the capability to empire.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to wake up one morning and you might be speaking Mandarin, bro.
Yeah, for real. That's exactly what it is. And and that is what it feels like too. Like it feels like geopolitical, the map is changing from America and Europe to America and the Middle East, which is really strange, right? Like I never would see that, but I'm fine with it because the European Union has been totally dominated by Islam and communism. And they're just totally like they don't even think for themselves. They've become just they're in the process of becoming proxies for China and radical Islam and so on and so forth. And so it's interesting too that you said that Russia is a proxy of China. You really think it's that deep for real?
I believe so, bro. Yeah. So Vladimir Putin's aspirations to bring back that czar style empire is very real. There's no question that it's very real, but he doesn't have the ability to segue everything as efficient as what he thought. And the reason that is if you could read books like Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, and these books talk about people's personalities and that we're all within a war against each other based on personality traits. And Putin is the best example of a king staying in a glass castle and just taking information and not discerning it properly back to the discernment. He's comfortable in Moscow, right? And so he's being fed stuff that they could do this, they could do that. But the reality is, you're fighting the same people. They were so the same that you had a whole cache of nuclear weapons in the Ukraine when you were the USSR, right?
Yeah.
Third, there is a very deep tie to the SS and the Azov fighters in Ukraine. Now, that doesn't make them better, but they are a different mindset. Maybe even willing to die the way a kamikaze would, let's say, right?
Mm.
Um, and so what's happening is this dynamic that when it comes to the gridiron of a foot fight, he overbit way bigger. He took off too much. And it was because of bad info being filled in his head and the fact that he's got oligarchs and people giving him money. You know, they're a defunct country. They're not efficient. And if they open themselves up more to more of a moderate type of country, they would have been, you know, not on our level, but fairly closer, I think. You know, in China, what happened was people don't realize this, but that trillions in debt by and large is the United States war debt that China bought off. And so during Obama, twice we lost our AAA rating because of the. And the main issue there is that no one has the answer. We're just going to keep building debt and deficit, debt and
Mm.
deficit. No, capitalism at some point, unless it just keeps growing, which how can it? Are we going to have 300 million trillion in debt
Yeah.
in 30 years? Very well could, right? So what has to happen is some type of blend or cascading of capitalism into something more proficient. And I hate to say it, but that's going to take some progressive types of thoughts and plans. But it has to be obviously monitored better so we don't have the Ilhan Omars of the world robbing us blind, right?
Yeah.
But that's the gig. And so China saw that we lied about our gold because the gold ain't there, bro, right?
Yeah.
Saw that we inflated by printing more and more money. And I'll tell you a quick story. I went and bought a car when I was married. My ex, I was buying her an SRX. It's like a mini sport utility Cadillac. And I have multiple banks, but the one that we use out here is Teachers Credit Union on Long Island. I needed 10K. Now in this bank at the time, I got like probably 300,000. Right? It's a business account. They did not have my 10K, bro. They're like, you got to fill out this form and come back on like an
Mm.
appointment. So right away, I realized that even the direct deposit that we get is fake, bro. It's a digital fake, just like Bitcoin. It don't exist.
That's real.
People like
Yeah.
there's no gold.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right? And we sold the gold off. And countries are asking for their gold. Some country last week took their gold back, bro. If you Google that, I forget which country. I want to say Bulgaria, maybe. But the fact is that capitalism is 1,000 times better. It's the best system in the world. It's amazing, but it's not the tell-all be-all because it has flaws that create issues. Now, I think what Trump sees as a visionary is the tariffs could eliminate us paying taxes, which then gives us more hold on tangible money, right? Which then, of course, makes you feel better economically, health wise. You know, it's a lot less stress, let's say, right? Um, so yeah, so that's what's happening, bro. And right now, it takes so much electrical usage to power AI. It's mind boggling. In fact, Trump told the companies that are pursuing AI to start their own grids of electrical systems. Um, Now, just tapping into the UAP stuff and UFO tech, Dr. Stephen Greer, his theory, and he's briefed like 5 presidencies. He's sharp as a tack, but in the UAP community, they're all saying, well, he's a fake person. He's not a soothsayer. He's lying. He's a shill. They're all chopping each other down as misinformationists because everybody wants to be right. Again, back to the discernment, right? But Stephen Greer basically says that we are actually like 100 years behind where we should be ethically. In other words, if the people knew that electrical power is all around you, like Tesla knew it was, you can't tap it and put a meter to it,
Mm.
right? So, because what he did was he took, DC and converted it into usable electricity. And
Yeah.
DC pulse is much more dangerous, but AC is much more applicable. It's controlled. But the problem there is it's metered now, right? So
Mm.
what Greer says is that they're holding on to these technologies like 0 point, like like the Halon Collider shows, anti gravity, propulsion, and then Bob Lazar in the new S4 film, which I've been on to Bob for a long time. But he said that he worked with the Element 115, which, by the way, is on the fucking periodic chart now, but it wasn't
Mm.
20 years ago.
Mm.
And it was an unknown space element that creates power to like a condenser unit, and that condenser goes to an emitter, and the emitter is vectoring.
Mm.
If you look at the F-35, it kind of vectors, right? Who knows? But some of these ships, they like lean forward like this, these UFOs, and they just take off, and they could stop at a dime. And nothing we have that we say we admit we are using can do that.
Yeah.
And then you think about the G forces inside of it. Man has a threshold where your brain will just become liquid, right? Like that jet in the Tom Cruise movie. That Dark Angel was out for like 20 years already. It's called Dark Star, actually. That thing can do Mach 10, bro, but it's an afterburn, right? They have shit that does Mach 20 with no visible thermal propulsion or aerodynamics.
Mm.
That to me is amazing because where did it come from? You
Yeah.
know, which ties into the UFO and all those Roswell things. So who knows?
Yeah. So, okay. So do you feel like Putin, like it feels kind of like he did expect this war to go a lot differently. Like he jumped into it too quickly, or that he didn't have the full measure of what he thought he was going to have. It doesn't feel like it's going according to plan. And I am with you on Russia too about all of that, because I was calling out Russia for a long time too. And to me, it was so obvious. And a lot of people on the conservative side started to go, well, no, Russia's not bad because the Democrat Party doesn't like them. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I understand that I don't like the Democrat Party, but I don't like Russia. That doesn't automatically mean that Putin's some good guy, some hero that's coming to save the day for the United States. Like, he's still trying to create the Soviet Union, right? Like, so do you feel like you say he had like misinformed people talking to him, and oligarchs and all that. And I believe that too, definitely. So, and I don't know if have you heard about, what's that guy's name? Alexander Dugin? Like, I've heard a lot about him coming up. He was on Tucker Carlson and all sorts of stuff. And a lot of people say that he's one of the people that's in Putin's ear, but I don't know. It's just really, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are people like that. Um, but look, these are the masters of misinformation. You're talking about a guy that's killed people with plutonium, bro. You're talking about a guy whose enemies in political theater end up thrown out of windows 4 stories up in the air, right? Um, but I believe there are people that have such a grandiosity, and basically what that is like a super overbloated ego, to where someone thinks that they need they need and deserve or are entitled to almost anything they can think of. It's just not how the universe works. I tell you to go try it. You'll find that success and true success comes out of leadership and accountability, and you're going to be metered throughout your career. Whereas a guy like that who has the threshold of power, really these people on that level, they really truly believe that. Now, you could also argue, and some do with me when we debate, well, that's Donald Trump. Right, but it's metered. It's a metered grandiosity, and I could speak to it to some extent. So I've been building in New York City for 30 years. I owe my career success to a freak encounter with Donald Trump Jr. And my dad built the West Side Highway units up for Trump under Trump World International and HRH Construction. My dad died Christmas Eve 2003. And that week I was in the home office. I hit my head on the shelf after drinking. And I wake up to this Rolodex open to Don Jr. And I called him up. A couple weeks later, he calls me back. I'm like, I want to be a rapper and entertainer. He goes, look, man, just walk in your dad's footsteps, right? So I did. And then, of course, I built out that 9 to 5 and did everything that I wanted to do, like that phone call with him. I now have done, but you have to have the money and time to be able to live the dream, right? And while I was on this trek, I built the Trump International in New Rochelle, New York. It's a 52 story high rise. And I met Donald Trump there several times. And one of his greatest attributes is he's a fucking people person. But it's also a double edged sword because if it sounds good to him, he's too approachable. And the Omarosas of the world and the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world, where we question ourselves, why the fuck does he allow these people around him? It's because, just like Putin, the realm around you is feeding you info. Use this guy. Oh, he'd be the best. Oh, you should keep Comey. Yeah, look how that fucking worked out. Right?
Yeah.
So what I'm getting here is with Trump, he's a mix of a laissez-faire, an autocratic, a democratic, and a dictatorship type of manager. And he knows how to kind of use all of them. And now you can see a much more polished presidency when you're looking back at the first admin. And that's because now he's gutted and put around him what he needed. He needed, because the face of the woke right was JD. That was their guy. Now they don't like him.
Mhm.
But you needed that youthful guy. You needed the guy that could bring in the DeSantis voters, right? Who everyone was like, oh, I can't believe it. You're not going to back DeSantis. Bro, get the fuck out of here. The most important thing is the presidency, right?
Yeah.
So they sharpened their tools and kept the right path this time around. So I believe he did tone down the grandiosity because of. But the moves he's making, if he told you this fucking 8 years ago, you'd say this motherfucker's nuts. But it's happening.
Yeah.
Right? So what I'm getting at is, to master something, you got to do it 10,000 hours or more. And just think of this analogy. If I told you that, the definition of insanity is you keep trying the same thing all the time and never recognizing that it's just not working, right? But that wasn't so when you learned how to ride your bike. You did that son of a bitch as much as it took until you were able to go.
Yeah.
So
There's a truth to that. Yeah.
So there's a fine line between complete insanity and going for it. And I'm an example of it. Like I literally willed myself onto the TV through that guy, Scott Walter. I willed myself into Rohan Marley's life. That's one of Bob Marley's sons. I got a song with Wyclef, the same thing. I have an ability to attract a certain group or wavelength, whatever that might be. And then I'm implement it and manage it. And some people have it of not being stressed under such heavy loads, and some don't. Trump's one of them. But Putin's not. He's telling you he wants to fucking kill somebody that he didn't win this war in the Ukraine. Right? Violent people. They're a dictatorship, bro. They're just a step above being a caliphate, only with a different ideology.
Yeah.
So it's mind-blowing how people have a lack of historical sense, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it really is like it's crazy, and there's just what worries me the most though is like it feels like if you go back 5, 10 years ago, if you were able to catch some of these people ahead of time and tell them what was going on, then they would have listened. But now it's become to the point where now because the mainstream news media or whoever their media is, whoever they choose, whatever they choose to say is what they believe, no matter what. So before the mainstream news media, like they'll ignore an entire mainstream story for weeks or months on end and just never talk about it. And in that slight sliver of information, you're trying to shove it to people because you know that the narrative is coming, that the fake narrative is going to be there. And then it seems like they'll even be listening like, oh, yeah, wow, that's really good because they're thinking critically. And then the next day, the day that they do come out and say, nope, this is what it is, they're so hardline to believe those people that they'll abandon everything, all the info and evidence you gave them for 8 months beforehand. And now it's like, how do you pierce through that kind of indoctrination and show them that I don't even know how you chip away at something like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a tough nut and shell to crack, right? But all we can do is speak the truth, not our truth. Notice I didn't say our truth, the truth,
Yeah.
right? Because these people are, and it can happen to anybody too. By the way, the left is exactly this, right? But let's just take Candace Owens for a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I grew up hunting and fishing upstate New York. I hunt with a 30-06, and it's my belief that that is not the gun that killed Charlie Kirk, right?
Okay.
I'll get into the ballistics in a minute. 6, 7 months before all that happened, actually since my ex became big again, Charlie and I followed each other. But 6 months before he passed away, we started talking. We had 2 phone calls. I had a few WhatsApps with him, video, and talked in his DM all the time. I wanted him to come out to Hofstra University out on Long Island. Now, Long Island is mostly red. The problem in New York, the core of the city are Democrats. And there's like 9 million people in the city. So the majority is right there when it comes to the Electoral College. So us becoming totally red, and even our governorship is real tough. We haven't had a Republican since Pataki. And some would argue that his first term was great, but he blew the second term. But that being said, um, you know, when you look at this whole thing with politics, it's crazy. So someone like a Candace is fixated, and maybe she truly thinks that she's like the soldier to help Charlie Kirk. But you would think if you really love this man, that in fact you would back his wife no matter what. And I can look at Erica Kirk and say, look, there's some wonky things that she looks like. It's weird. But I know what it likes to lose a dad on a holiday, bro. Imagine if you just lost your husband. And I think she's under duress and pressure because Turning Point can't fail because it was responsible for winning the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
Period. It
Yeah.
was too big to. This is why Trump probably said, hey, look, chick, we're going to the stadium next week. Are you going to show up and keep the company intact, or are you going to cry away and wither away, which most people had the luxury of doing that if, God forbid, their husband or wife dies in a
Yeah.
normal life. But again, speaking to the titans of the world and media and rich and civility, all this stuff comes into play. She
Mm-hmm.
did an impeccable keeping Turning Point alive, and I would expect nothing else of someone of that caliber. That's just
Yeah.
my opinion on it. Or
Yeah.
I can look at these in the face and say, I believe that is not the weapon that did. Now, when the article came out with the Post, they said ATF says bullet not used in murder, blah blah blah. What the actual article said was that because it was fragmented, they couldn't run ballistics.
Yeah.
However, the court documents in discovery show he had gunpowder on his fucking hands and clothes. He admitted to the shooting. The only thing we disagree on here at this point is that it wasn't the gun.
Yeah.
So I still think shooter, but I think they used a 300 blackout or something else.
Mm.
I think they rushed. I think part of the problem, this comes back to the grandiosity of the president, and he surrounds himself with these people that all think they're hotshots. This is why Bongino left. But imagine if Kash Patel says something too fucking fast.
Mm.
He did. He said it too fast. We got him. No, you didn't, asshole. Not to the next day.
Mm.
Right? Everybody wants to be right and correct all the time. This is my point. And it's on both sides, right? For an example, Laura Loomer, who we follow each other. We've talked quite a bit on X. About a year and a half ago, she posted a story, Canadian man terrorist attacks toll booth. I went and shared it. My fucking account exploded,
Mm.
except she was wrong. The guy had a heart attack and blew through the exit
Mm.
in the car at the Tesla at the fucking toll booth. She didn't come back and fix it,
Yeah.
right? My point. Some people sometimes they get ahead of themselves and then they're too embarrassed to fix what they said. And I don't know why they don't. Maybe they like the traffic, whatever. But the point is that we're all guilty at some point of maybe over speaking something, and then someone like a Bongino is not built that way, bro. It's just logic. That's it, you know. And so what I'm saying is Robinson could in fact be the killer, but they used a different weapon. Maybe there is a they. I don't know that it isn't or not, right?
Yeah.
What I do know is that I'm not the guy there. I seen people on X Spaces. We were having a debate. Oh, there was no caution tape. How do you know that? Were you there? I
Yeah.
can rest assured, there was caution tape. You just didn't see it. The
Mm.
concrete was gone the next day. Yeah. Do you know that the college had a contract to do like $2-3 million worth of work that week? They're not going to lose the money. There was
Yeah.
no ballistics left. It's in his neck or it's not, right?
Mm.
And that's the thing with the 3006. The lightest grain you can get, gunpowder weight, is 150 grain for a 3006. And it goes all the way up to 220. All right. You shoot a 220 at 100 yards, bro. If you shot a pumpkin, there's no pumpkin left, bro.
Mm.
I'm talking about you hit a broadside of a shoulder of a deer, it blows the other shoulder off that deer, bro.
Mm.
Now, 150 grain would do 3/4 of that damage. Just imagine on a human neck. Now, I don't know if you could tell, but I got a huge scar right here. I got cut at the Limelight in 1994,
Yeah.
and my carotid was nicked. I almost died. The guy that cut me died in the hospital. A whole nother story. But when I saw that shot, I thought it like nicked the carotid, and that's why it exploded.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Right? But what they're saying is that it lodged in and hit the vertebrae and then went down
Yeah.
and fragmented. And that bullet mushrooms, it doesn't fragment. Period. Now, 300 blackouts, which is basically less, it's got less speed, but it hits you at a barrier point that could fragment.
Mm.
And the sound is less. So I'm thinking that he used something else and they pushed that 3006 story because they probably were already investigating his dad and knew about them fucking shooting these rifles and stuff. Who knows? But my point is, you or I, we can look at that and say, look, there are some things here that just don't add up. But that doesn't mean that the Jews killed them,
Mm.
that the president killed him, because there's a theory out there that people were afraid he could run for president. I mean, it's when something is disproved, they come out with 100 other things that are like something else true, you know, which basically sets it up that there really is no debate, you know. And by the way, that guy that I was telling you on the Alex Jones show, the reason I tied him to Alex Jones is he worked for him. He was his sound engineer, and it was his show, not Alex's, but this guy. I got to find his name and text it to you.
All right.
But he's the host. He's the host, the moderator, and the debater. And I'm
Mm.
like, my man, how are we debating equally here, bro? If
Mm.
you're
Yeah.
the be all the whole thing, you know? But yeah, man, fun times, bro.
Yeah. So you were talking about Candace Owens. What do you think? And also I agree with what you're saying about Erica because I could see where people they say she acts strange here, she does this there, anything like that. But like you said, how I feel about that is, I mean, she did just witness her husband murdered on live TV in front of the whole world, and
Yeah,
simultaneously automatically picks up a global network that's the biggest network on the right side in the country. So, if she wasn't acting weird, it would be a little bit stranger to me, honestly.
right,
So,
right.
yeah. And so, what do you think? Now, Candace Owens, like, she's gotten I don't. She seems like she's the polar opposite of everything that she ever was when she first started out, at least like in a virality sense. Do you think that she was always who she is now and it's coming out, or she's evolved over time, or what do you think's going on there?
She is who she is. We should believe her, bro.
Yeah,
Right? She was a far left Democrat before she became a conservative.
it's true.
Right? Now, I want to be very clear because I have a lot of great female friends. Don't mistake me talking about y'all that have been liberals and now conservatives, and thank God for you guys because you helped win this presidency. But the mindset of this type of person that actually never changed, but was willing to wear a different mask to fit the stage.
Mm.
And this again is in 48 Laws of Power, again, Robert Greene's book and The Art of Seduction. And people will wear the mask they need for the particular party that they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she did. She rode the coattails of Shapiro and even Tucker now. What you know what's eerie, bro? Have you seen the videos where the guy makes fun of Tucker? He's got the fucking Tucker wig on.
Yeah.
So he also does Candace Owens. And
Mm-hmm.
I realized when he's doing the vocals, Candace sounds exactly like Tucker. She's patterned.
Yeah, it really is like that. Yeah.
Right? So, and then she gets all the words. She makes her own words up like she's George Bush. It's insane, bro. And all these people following her, they don't even see that she's
Mm-hmm.
making her own words. So how I feel about her is she infiltrated us.
Yeah.
Okay. What are you going to do? I mean, you got to weed them out. And this is why that's exactly the progressive communist strategy and
Yeah.
why we're at an intellectual war with intellectually dishonest people. And I'll just tell you this real quick. We love chess, Europe, United States, chess and getting checkmate and strategy. But the Chinese, they play a game called Wei Shi, or Chinese Go. And what that is, it's similar to chess, but you don't need to put one particular piece in checkmate. You can pocket the whole board with a certain amount of force to control the whole board without all being at the same place in time. That's China's strategy, and it always has been. It's right out of The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And this is where terrorist and guerrilla warfare comes from, is right out of that chapter of Sun Tzu. And that's what the Chinese do. They're willing to wait 150 years more, bro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a dynamic thing. And it's the same thing with the liberals here in this country. And they thought they had it, bro. They were at a point, right, where they were garnering that Hillary was going to win, would have been an extension of Obama, and that the American people would come to terms with us all just being Democrats all the time. But the reality is the Tea Party stopped that. So the blanket voting and all that shit wasn't allowing to happen. It created a rift in conservatism, but then it worked. And now here we are on a bigger scale in the Senate and Congress where it's almost the same thing, where we can't get something to pass because there's too much lobbying and special interest. And these motherfuckers have made deals with people and the devil that they're binded to. And I would have where every American citizen has to serve in Congress or the Senate for 3 years, and then you're out. You're never allowed to do it again. And this way, we never have a shortage of new members, and you don't get to serve for 25, 30 years either, bro.
Yeah.
Well, and by the guy that was the leading forefront KKK member was the mentor of Hillary and Joe Biden, and that was Byrd.
Mm-hmm.
And he passed during Obama's presidency. This guy was the grand master of the KKK, bro. I'm pretty sure, bro, me and you are walking down the street and we see a bunch of hooded motherfuckers looking to kill a black guy. We're going to help the black guy too.
Yeah.
There's racism the way they make you want it, the way they want you to think it is. It just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't exist on that level anymore, you know? It's scary times, bro.
Yeah. And I agree with a lot of what you just said there. Like, all of that's really spot on. So, like, I think that she was infiltrated as well. And it's really freaky to see somebody that has that level of composure. Like, I mean, that's almost like intelligence agency level of being able to intercede into something like that. I'm not saying that she was involved in anything like that, but what I am saying is that she comes from a very cunning, there's a high intelligence, very manipulative personality that's going on there, and that needs to be very watched. And her husband has like ties to the royal family or something like that. I just learned that recently, and he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, they own Parler, right? And if you remember, Parler was going to be the social media to
They
compete with
own
Twitter.
Parler?
Yeah, her husband is a owner of Parler.
Are you for real? I
And
had no idea.
yeah, yeah, look it up, bro. And also go look at all the nanobots that are on her page that are from Parler. So what they're able to
Wow.
do, they're able to influx 9,000 comments, which creates algorithm, which
Hmm.
creates movement, traction, and it's really bad, bro. Yeah, that's a big thing. You
I
know,
never even
um,
thought of that. Yeah, that's crazy. I'm definitely gonna have to look into that for
I, I
sure.
I had I used to have a guy, right? I can't say his name, but when I was in the music business, there are a lot of crooked things that happened, especially with numbers.
Mm.
Now, every other week on Tuesday, the music business, the labels, they get a report from Billboard, Nielsen SoundScan. And that week, they get every single album sale, digital streams, the whole nine. This gives the label a gauge of where to put budgets next. Now, back in the day when they would find you and develop you and you had a sound or a niche, they would have allocated numbers and push you right out. First week, you had a album signing, you sold 30,000 that week. All right, 30,000 a week. That means in a month you're going to clear 100. You got a silver record. Well, if you're Justin Bieber or P. Diddy or whoever, you might have a gold record. So what this does is it triggers the distribution to create more hard copies at the time. This is what it was in the 80s and 90s. And then the stores would go and order X amount based on the first week's sales. But it was all fluff. It didn't exist. It was a lie. It was a way to do your inventory and fluff the numbers, right? And so what happens is you get a lot of deadbeat fake stuff when it comes to accounts and numbers. People buying followers on X. The reason I bring up X is when it was Twitter, there would be 100,000 eggs faces on like a day you would see new. If you clicked on like trending, you would see all these fake accounts and no one gave a shit. That guy Dorsey did not care. Now, when Elon bought it, he cleaned it up as much as he could. But during that first Super Bowl that he owned it, people accused him of playing numbers with advertising because he needed to have more volumization to get Nike or FIFA, whoever, to put more money into ads.
Yeah.
Because if you go to flatline, what's the point? You want the best quality viewer, not an egg or a fake fucking account like a bot farm.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at, bot farms were very real, bro. And the music business in particular was using them. And I think the same mentality is used with voting as well.
I believe that.
Cheap, bro. You know, it's scary.
Yeah, I 100% believe that. I've thought that for a while now because when you see all the bots that are on social media and yeah, and all sorts of numbers and stream numbers, it makes, and then you want to say that, well, there's no way anyone could ever do that with a voting machine, and there's no way anybody could inflate data like that. It's like we see it all the time in the real world. Like it makes, I've
Yeah,
always thought that's probably the same technology they use to float election results, really.
yeah, bro. Yeah. Yeah, dude, I was before I got into construction, before my dad passed and all that, I was with Shell Oil. And at the time I was in charge of like 400 Jiffy Lube stores in the Northeast. Shell Oil bought Pennzoil. And basically there was like a 4-to-1 split. I made a lot of money in my stocks. But you know, we would do an inventory and you would find that all the synthetic oil was missing. At the time the Hondas and the VTEC motors were big. So it was my race guys stealing the oil, bro. And I had to offset the cost of goods by saying that I had more conventional in the barrels.
Mm.
That would break because your cost of goods for any business, you want to be between like a low number is 20%. You don't want to be much more than 25. 25 is getting a little bit high
Mm.
if your labor percent is above 18. Your good labor percent is like 16 to 20. You can be 20 if your cost of goods is lower or vice versa.
Mm.
So I played the numbers game for a living, bro.
Mm-hmm.
You're not telling me they can't fucking cheat a Scantron machine, bro. No way
Yeah.
am I ever, you know?
Yeah. You have to be kind of asinine to believe that,
Yeah.
honestly. So, and I heard that Dominion voting machines, I know that like some Republican billionaire had bought them, and I remember people said that they originally came from Venezuela, and Trump said something about after they got Maduro that they also found a lot of that election data down there and that he caught all of them. I remember him saying directly, "We got them. It's over with." And I guess that just hasn't come out yet. So that's really interesting too. Yeah.
There's going to be things that we're never going to hear again, and that's just what the truth is. But that is a viable story because that's what they use to cheat their election. And the Democrats, like I said, how they were there during the Ukrainian early years of the war, they let Crimea happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be one of the worst military blunders ever in history, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Was allowing Russia, this piece of shit let Russia into the port of Tartus in Syria
Mm-hmm.
under the guise of ISIS,
Mm-hmm.
then let them annex Crimea, all while denying Ukraine access to NATO, which I agree they shouldn't have been NATO because it would have sparked a real war hot back then. But you're playing this fucking this game secretly. And at the time, what they didn't want to come out was Russia and China had already developed hypersonic missiles, and we didn't. Now we have them. But the reason we didn't is because of the lasers
Yeah.
that we've now for. We knew we could shoot anything down with laser viability. And of course, you had a few space drones, and I think we're undefeatable. Like what we just proved, other than troops on land, which not going to happen that way. But this was a complete disarming and takedown. Iran was no pussies, bro. What they did very different was use proxies all the time for their wars. In other words, Hezbollah, Hamas. Hezbollah are cocaine dealers, bro. They were in South America also. There's guaranteed proof of that. So people are fucking sitting there on their Sunday morning quarterback couch, eating popcorn and fucking eating bonbons, thinking they're happy, and then they go out to protest on Monday morning. They leave their mom's dusty couch for a day or so, and they have no clue what the fuck they're even talking about, bro.
Mm-hmm.
It's really like mind bending how crazy this is. And I got to tell you, if you remember when the Arabs started overthrowing their countries in like the Arab Spring, the first thing I thought, because like 6 months before that was the Wall Street walkout, and it wasn't a riot, but it was a giant protest for like a week. They were sleeping in the middle of fucking East Side Park. And I remember thinking to myself, if the United States ever turns into that, like what was happening in the Middle East, we're going to have big problems here. And then, of course, you had Minnesota and Mike Brown and everything after that. And that all got ushered in under Obama. You know, again, the brainwashing of somehow blacks are being targeted by cops just to shoot them in the face. When we need that personable accountability and call it for what it is. Because the fact is, don't lie, there are thousands of more white people shot by cops every year in the United States.
Yeah.
It's just so then you'll get the extreme pro-black person, which pro-black's not a bad thing, but when it gets mixed with this ideology of far left, it does become a problem. Blacks can't be racist, right? Which is completely, and per capita this and that. It's like, bro, every one of these you can say that the Democratic run city is in a red state. Yeah, but it doesn't matter if the Democratic city is run like it's fucking Moscow.
Yeah.
That type of progressivism,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we're going with man dummy. This could get
Yeah.
real bad up here, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, Mum Dummy, I'm really keeping a big eye on that, a big giant microscope on that. Yeah, you're from New York too. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, Long Island, that's right. That's so he's your mayor.
Well, not of Long Island because we have executives. So Nassau County and Suffolk County have a town executive, but
Interesting.
he's the mayor of all 5 boroughs. But
Yeah.
but the thing is, I work out there every day. It's where my business is. Look, it's not all his fault. COVID has a lot to do with it. And this last mayor, Adams, was a fucking criminal. Not
Mm.
even from New York, actually.
Mm.
But he did side with Trump on a lot of things, but that doesn't mean you're a good person, bro.
Mm.
At the end of the day, You have high rises that are empty here in New York City, bro, because of COVID, because everyone went woke and wanted to work remote.
Hmm.
But for business, that didn't work. Those businesses are gone now, bro.
Mm-hmm.
So now they want to convert those high rises into residential. But unless you bring the price way down, you can't, because like a condo in Manhattan is fucking millions of dollars, bro.
Yeah.
So they want low income housing out of these high rises that are now just vacant. You got to rezone them. If I build a regular condo, each apartment's bathroom on the whole floor match. It's called the chase wall.
Mm.
But in a commercial building, you only have plumbing where you need it.
Mm.
Like the break room is one bathroom per floor, not 30 of them.
Mm.
So all these new things have to happen to get it to be livable, which means spending many more millions of dollars. This guy just wiped out the deficit with an $8 billion loan from Hochul, and
Mm.
then has the balls to go to TV and say, we fixed the deficit, you know?
Yeah. That is true though. I didn't know they were doing that. Like with the condos to turn them into low income housing. Like that's a huge thing. That's gonna be like with the
Yeah.
rezoning and everything, just like you said it, like that's crazy because I mean that's just gonna change the whole layout of the entire city. It's gonna and there's a reason for that too, and I don't think it's because he cares so much about the people that need low income housing. I think there's definitely something else going on there. But it's like he, I don't know. You think that he's tied in with the Muslim Brotherhood?
Absolutely, bro. A million percent. And then the other thing is a lot of those buildings that I just described were bought up by China, the CCP.
Mm.
And so even though since COVID there's nobody in them, the valuability still rises because it's a high rise in Manhattan.
Mm.
So if it was 100 million and now it's worth 900 million, they take the equity out and they gone.
Mm.
That's a CCP scam, bro.
Yeah.
So a lot of things happening that again the average person never sees. They don't know what to look for. They just like to be ear beaten to death and be told what their party wants them to hear. You know?
Yeah. Do you think that's is like what is that with like with normal everyday people? Is that because they just don't care, they're just indifferent, or is it a mixture of it was never taught inside of the school system and culture altogether?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that it's remiss and not taught properly. But even if it was, the teachers who are also like borderline communists will put their political conjecture into the conversation also. That's why it's so prevalent for females and males to have a problem with sports right now or sharing the bathrooms. And all that comes down to the dead time during COVID that was evident, you know. Um, at the same time, someone like Grant Cardone, who I became friendly with on X, speaking in many big spaces with him. It would be me and him versus the Krasensteins brothers. I mean, the guy's amazing, billionaire from South Florida. He homeschooled his kids. Now they do great. I believe he's doing a great job. But what is missing from that, right? Well, what's
Hmm.
missing? The social aspect of being
Hmm.
around kids your age group
Yeah.
that I think inherently absolutely needed to develop a young kid,
Yeah, I
good or
agree.
bad.
I agree
They're
with that.
forced to deal with it, right? So, like my two daughters, they're 13 and 17. My 17-year-old is brilliant, passes everything. She's been to Europe twice through the school system, 4.0. Every college in the East Coast is looking at her, right? She graduates next year. Don't have to show her nothing. Fix it up, bro. My other daughter is a bull in a china shop. She don't give a shit, bro. She knows they're going to fucking pass her no matter what because she's just a number.
Mm.
He's going to be the C plus student. But when you look at every single successful billionaire, these guys were making Microsoft in their garage and dropped out of college, bro.
Yeah.
So what the efficacy of a fucking college degree is my point.
Hmm.
All I'm saying, you have to have the social aspect in early youth. Once you're in college, though, now you're getting inundated with this cabal of left wing thinking.
Hmm.
You know,
And
that's the problem with it.
who do you think the headquarters for that is? Like, I don't know that it's China or that there's a bigger player behind China that's with China or using China.
It's a mix of all of it, bro. Right? Like it really is a mix of all of it.
Yeah.
I think that, when you have the Bill Ayers of the world, right? On the right side, we had the Koch brothers. And during the time of conservatism in the 80s and early 90s, we were the warlike party, right? Don't you find it's funny that it's switched?
Hmm.
Right? And Democrats are all for the Ukraine war, spend, spend, spend. It's just mind boggling.
Hmm.
But the infiltration is rampant and it's definitely runs deep. And a lot of it goes back to wearing the mask for the entity that you're in. And that book I told you about, The Rise of the Fourth Reich. I think that the communists were smart enough to recognize that they could co-adapt. And so maybe the Nazis did come here and just evolved into a form of they saw that the McCarthyism was happening, so everybody was shooting at communism, which took the heat off of this Nazi fascist type of look.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, they were already here. They infiltrated our companies, right?
Yeah.
And the left infiltrated the companies through the indoctrination of the kids graduating from college,
Yeah.
right? Let's face it, left and right, somewhere in the middle saying the truth, right? Like independently. The problem with independence is it's never going to be enough to actually win an election on a national scale. It's just
Yeah.
never going to happen, ever
Yeah.
in a million years, right? We do need to have opposing sides, but you have to have compromise. So that means that even if I don't like something that New Scum wants to do, I have to look at something, he says, because I have to give something in a comparison that's going to bring us to a compromise, right? And the same goes for our side. But neither side is willing to have that compromise. Let's just look at the Eagleman brothers, right? Gunther Eagleman, I'm very friendly with him too. Huge on X. He would be going after Mike Johnson like it was flies on shit, bro. But Mike Johnson is loved by Trump, and there's nothing you're ever going to do. Just like I said about Israel, you can
Yeah.
hate it all you want; it's not going anywhere. It's very obvious that Mike Johnson's here to stay, bro. You're wasting your breath fighting that battle.
Mhm.
Then he got to speak with Johnson on a live X space, and then Johnson said, "I know who you are. I see you in the comments." He acknowledged them, and it toned it right down.
Mm.
Now we have other issues like the Massies, the Thunes. What people need to understand is that on the level of government that they're on, they've made promises, not just to the constituency. And they know that if they do this, it's going to do that. So that's why they're afraid of killing the filibuster and fucking going balls to the wall. Because then
Mm.
the Democrats, they already did that once before, the Democrats,
Yeah.
right? So we already know what the answer is. So what I'm getting at, we're at a point now where this two-party system is just like the parliament, where the Europeans are throwing fucking shoes at each other.
Mm.
Their
Yeah.
parliament, right? And nothing's done. So this is what we have to focus on, really resetting the system and going back to core values like Trump is trying to do. For instance, in the civil law and criminal law system, I could tell as a fucking blind person, a dead Ray Charles could see that O.J. Simpson was guilty, bro, hands
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
But jury didn't think so, and I have to honor that jury, bro, because when it comes my turn, I want the same unalienable rights.
Yeah.
Period. Just like free speech. I have to back that person's speech, the right to have it, if I want to enact and keep mine.
Yeah.
And that's the essence of America. So even though justice gets it wrong sometimes and the court system gets it wrong sometimes, it's more right than it's wrong.
Yeah.
In other words, 100 killers that get the death penalty, you might get one or two that were wrongfully convicted.
Hmm.
And there's a system to fix that. But if it's a duck or a dog or a cat, I'm taking the safe bet every single time. And we need to get back to that decor to where these are the values and principles, and they're not always going to be perfect. But if we don't stick to something, we're going to stand for nothing,
Yeah.
you know? And that's where we have to go back to, you know?
Yeah. So what do you think about the Pope and the Catholic Church?
What do you want to know? Well,
About
this Pope,
yeah, this
this Pope is American.
you said
So
what?
look, this Pope's American, actually. He's from
Yeah,
Chicago.
yeah,
So I've studied religion quite a bit, and in Freemasonry, you have to believe in an all-powerful power more than yourself. But the Catholic Church can't stand Freemasonry because one of their Secretary of Treasuries was a Mason and robbed them.
Mm,
And from that point forward, it was a no bueno.
mm,
But I don't think any man is divine or
mm.
divine right. In the medieval times, both a king or the Pope claimed divinity, right?
Yeah.
That they were by this fatherhood of God. But, you know, Jesus accepts everybody,
Mm,
right? So under the kingdom, if that's the thing that you believe in, it takes an awful amount of faith to even get to that point where I'm going to trust that this story is true.
yeah.
And even if I doubt, putting the faith in something sometimes means having blind faith, right? Um, but saying that, the Catholic Church, by and large, from Constantine forward, was basically meant to control people. They recognized right away that there was so much belief in Jesus that if they made that the forefront of both their government and lifestyle, that people would acclimate to it very fast. And then the division between the Orthodoxy came when Constantinople and Rome became separate Rome. You had basically two Romes. And very similar. Orthodox is very similar, but it's more aligned towards Coptic Christianity and Egyptian and Ethiopian Christianity. And the only reason for that is the story of Solomon and Queen Sheba. Queen Sheba had a son with Solomon, and his name was Menelik. And in the Kebra Nagast, which is the Ethiopian Bible, um, Menelik goes to Israel when he's a youthful, 19, and the only people that could touch the Ark of the Covenant were from the tribe of Judah, and the priests were not Judah tribe. People confuse this all the time. Um, and Menelik stole the Ark and went back to Ethiopia with it, is the story. And the reason he survived was because he was the true son of in the tribe of Judah. And it's so funny because in Lalibela and Axum, there are churches that have been dug down into the ground out of limestone, where it's said that the Ark is hidden to this day. And here's a funny thing: every high priest since the time of Menelik gets cataracts on their eyes, bro, because they can't look directly at the Ark without scarred by the rays of divinity. It's so crazy. And this story is the very founding source for the Rastas and the Bob Marley Rastafarians. Because why would the black man benefit from a story that's verifiable? In other words, Solomon is one of the few stories in the Bible that you can prove was a living king. And Rastafari is a direct lineage of Menelik. So it's very interesting. So when you have a religion that's for the people, it's truly for the people, right? Um, like my younger daughter, I was telling you, the bull in a china shop. She goes through these ideas. Last week, she wanted to study the Torah and maybe become Jewish. So I have a lot of Jewish friends, and I told her, I said, you're going to be denied 3 times before they'll allow you to convert, which is true. If you go to a Hasidic or Orthodox, they're going to try to talk you out of it because your mom has to be Jewish for the lineage to be true for the bloodline. But that said, they wouldn't say no, get the hell out of here, you don't deserve it. Other religions like the fundamental Islamists, they want to conquer you and force you into it. And with Christianity, it's not so much a forcing, but it's the politics and the hierarchy of it that was then still led through the Romans in the theater of war. You know, so it's amazing stuff. This history, bro. It's pretty crazy stuff.
So, what do you think, like this Pope specifically, what he's doing with Trump and what his take is on the war in the Middle East? And he's from Chicago, I know, being the first American Pope ever. That's also where Barack Obama comes from, too, isn't it?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I think it's a leftist ideology in his head. There's no doubt about it. But again, to look at this war and not see the stark benefits that it's going to have in the long run, and people are blind, and including the Pope. Because, and I hate when people do this false equivalent stuff, right? But Ethiopia is at war, right? Nigeria is killing itself. Millions of people are being killed all over the world, and he's not saying a word about it.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's front and center, they hearken to it. And,
Mm.
listen, one of the biggest things with Trump, he's the most transparent president I think we've ever had. I mean, they have a press release every day.
Yeah.
Watch him with the Marine One. He don't even want to walk away from the press, bro. It's,
Yeah.
it's like he just stay there talking all day. And why not? It's the free press.
Yeah.
It's immediate propaganda, good or bad. You
Yeah.
know. So it's just amazing. When you look at the times we're in, it's crazy, bro.
Yeah. It's definitely crazy. And okay, so like so you were saying about UFOs. You think that like what do you think about all these scientists that are like coming up missing? Like there's like 13 of them that are dead or missing or kidnapped in broad daylight, all sorts of crazy stuff.
There's no coincidence there, bro.
Yeah.
Not even the cousin of coincidence, which is what we would call a synchronicity,
Yeah.
something that's nuanced, but like that's just mathematically off the charts to me.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and if you listen to Bob Lazar's story, people shot at him. In fact, the first film he made with Jeremy Corbell was probably 2018. I forget the name of it, but it was predating this new S4 movie. And the next day after the film came out, the FBI raided his house, bro.
Really?
Like, yeah, bro. It's like this. Why would it happen? Like, why?
Mhm.
Like, so what? This is the thing. Uh, I was involved with a coring and boring company in the '90s in Denver under a certain area, which I won't say its name, but if you patch the places together, you can find out what I'm talking about. And those tunnels go on and on and on and on, up and down across the country.
Mhm.
And and uh, and Tesla right now is at the helm of some of those new tunnels,
Mhm.
to say the least. The company I was working for may or may not have become one of the top 6 or 7 DoD contractors. Again, I don't know. You could look that up also pretty quickly. But everybody had a compartmentalization. In other words, the electrical group didn't know what the plumbing group, the coring group didn't know about the landfill group. Everything is done this way so that they can track exactly where leaks come from. But like Bob Lazar says in S4, when they wanted to get into the machine, which was the actual UFO that he was in, to see how the functionality of this machine they were testing, how does it work? What does it charge? What's energizing what? Well, then you need to talk to the electrical group too, don't you? And the government wouldn't allow them. So that's the problem with these companies, founding situations that are black ops government. And that's who I think has progressed to this titan here in the United States.
Yeah.
That they have a way to usurp no matter what the power is, left or right, Republican or Democrat. Like I was saying, similarly to the wars we have to fight, the ends justifies the means in their mindset. And I think that that's what's happening. That the Republic is a facade for what we've truly become, which might be interdimensional, bro,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's a theory that I've been working on for a long time, and now people are saying it too, that a lot of these beings are us coming back in a time loop.
Mm.
And you've probably heard, well, how come the UFOs don't just destroy us? Well, there's a little thing called the paradox, right? And if you change this piece from the past, changes this much from the future.
Mm.
So they can't kill because then therefore they might not exist, right? But there's a lot of things that go into this conversation. When you get into the mindset of like a lot of these Buddhists and Zen and Taoists, right? Um, they believe that there's only the present, right? You can't go back to the past. And where is this future? Have you been there?
Yeah.
The answer is no. When you wake up tomorrow, you're in the future, but you're really not. Because guess what, my friend? You're in the present.
Yeah.
So again, this what I've heard from pretty worthy people is that this interdimensional and conscious fabric have come together in some way in what we would say is the future, and that it's all interconnected in one big thing, all happening exactly at the one big time of everything that we know of and ever
Yeah.
will know or have known. It's pretty hard to grasp that, you know. But
Yeah.
think about it. Just think of looking up at the stars tonight. How that star might not even be shining still, but
Hmm.
it's the light emanating a billion years ago.
Yeah.
It's insane, bro.
Yeah. That's crazy. So you don't believe that they're extraterrestrial? You believe that they're interdimensional?
Right. Well, I think that there are extraterrestrials, but I think what's here are interdimensional. I think that you have definitely underwater UFOs that have been here maybe even for millions of years, bro. Right? It's so funny. There was a couple in the 60s that they said they were accosted by aliens, and they woke up in their house and it felt like 4 days had passed, right? And the wife drew, which at the time no one knew because it hadn't been found yet, but it was Zeta Reticuli. And it's a galaxy that they say the Greys are from. And Betty and something, I forget the guy's name, Clark is the last name. You can look this story up. Um, like 10 years later, we found Zeta Reticuli, bro. And she fucking drew it on a paper and said that the alien showed it to her in the ship, dude.
That's really
And
interesting.
from their position they were in New Hampshire. From their position, they could have never seen that constellation.
That's really weird. I've never. Yeah, I'll
Yeah, so
definitely look that up. Yeah.
you know, so listen, evolution, we question it. You have to, right? Um, because the chimps are still there, right? If we came from that, you'd think that a large part of that would be gone or decimated, right? Um, like for instance, you can look at there's a number that you can go to and carbon date every bird all the way back to dinosaurs. In other words, the vertebrae, the shape are very similar to what dinosaurs were. You could argue the same with fish and how they developed an amphibious aspect and got out of water. Whatever that missing link was, we'll never really know. But when you look at history, here in the United States, you have what was called the Clovis people. They're about 100,000 or so years ago. And we find their bones buried in marshes, even as far south as Florida, right?
Yeah.
And, and then you had the Salutrians, which were about like 200,000 years ago, but they, for some reason, had more modernized weapons, and no one knows why. Both of them came across the ice bridge out of Russia. Both of them have DNA that are directly tied to the Eskimos. The Eskimos are directly tied to the Asians and the Russians. The time frame, no one knows. But if you look at the Bible, we're told 7,000 years, but that doesn't add up to what we can carbon date. And let's not forget, it's because the Bible's man-made and written, but from what they were describing, they were seeing. So they could be right or they could be wowed. Like they thought they saw something that they didn't, right? I mean, if I take this microphone and it's right here and I close my right eye, it moves. I close my left eye, it moves. That's just depth perception, right? That you can apply that figure to almost any situation. If me and you witness a murder, we might have very different views of what happened.
Yeah.
Like police, any investigator will tell you that eyewitness testimony is terrible, bro.
Mhm.
You know. So that said, the time frame of man himself is we just don't know enough, you know. And if you believe the out of Africa theory, there's 4 haplogroups that everybody's tied to, and they all come about a million years ahead of the other. So if you go back 4 or 5 million years or so, people started leaving Africa. And think about who would have left. Well, when we went west, only the baddest, hardened, fucking bison killing motherfuckers went and populated the West. The meek and the poor didn't go on those trips, bro, because they would not live. So you have to assume that the very best fit, ballsy, aspirational, that's who left Africa. So who stayed behind? The meek, the sick, the weak. So who populated the world? The excelled version of humanity. That's just a fact. It can't be denied because you wouldn't have all the civility we have now. If you go to anywhere that's still tribal, what's there? Less civility, less technological advancements, many disease, right? It's like we culled out the weak parts to become this civil, industrious world. And somehow, if these aliens are us, they become asexual or something, bro. Because I never seen one yet in a drawing or a photo that had a penis or boobs, right? And guess what's happening? The average male's testosterone's tanking like 10% every decade since like the World War II. Boys think they can become women. I mean, things are changing, bro.
That's kind of
It'd be
crazy, though,
scary.
isn't it? Yeah.
It'd be scary if somehow mankind becomes intrinsically involved with AI, and that's what the Greys or these super physiological beings are, bro.
Like,
Mind-boggling.
yeah, like synchronicity or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
That's really interesting. And so you were talking about the Hadron Collider too, like CERN and all of that. Like, what do you think of CERN? I hear a lot of stuff about CERN, like a lot of crazy stuff.
Well, I think they were looking for the God particle or a neutrino, which is a protein particle, um, that would be the DNA pattern to create life. I think is what they're looking for. They claim they found it. I don't know how true that is, but there's a CERN collider right here in Brookhaven, right where I'm at. Actually, I'm like 20 minutes from it. And ironically enough, that's where Nikola Tesla was building his first coil, the size of a telephone fucking tower. And so he was definitely hip to this type of technology for sure. And then there's the whole story of Trump and his baron. Trump's uncle is the guy who took Tesla's stuff out of the New Yorker hotel when he passed away, bro.
Really?
Yeah, bro, look that up. It's a fucking fact, dude.
That's crazy.
You can't make it up, bro. But
Yeah,
there's a story that Barron Trump is a time traveler,
I've
and
heard
there's
that.
this book in the 1800s that describes all this crazy stuff. But again, who knows? You never know. There's a little jest in every truth, they say.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've heard like the stuff like with CERN, like people say they're trying to open up portals to other dimensions and stuff like that. I don't know if you heard anything like that.
I heard it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they have it.
Mm,
Look, if we're time traveling and we're interdimensional, something has to reconstitute the body.
yeah.
Let's just break it down for a second, right? Let's just really look at it. If we're going to drone technology now that's unmanned, well, the main factor would be A, it's sparing money and lives, but B, we can only handle a certain G force.
Mm,
Then you have to question, well, why would aliens come here not in a drone when they could if they were so sophisticated?
mm, yeah.
Right? In other words, you think they would be susceptible to the same, G forces that we would be. But if they've become physiological and equipment based also, maybe that's not so. Now, Bob Lazar and Stephen Greer have said that the ship's technology creates an aura around it. So picture this microphone as the spaceship, and that there's a force field around it. So when this thing is traveling at crazy speeds, the force field is protecting anything that's inside of it.
Yeah.
So you never feel the effect of the anti G's.
Mm,
Um, but think about if me and you travel at the speed of light, we'd be dead, bro. by the time you ever reach your destination.
Yeah.
So whatever their traveling system is, has got to be kind of like if you were to punch a hole in the east side of this paper and fold it in half to occupy the same spot, right? Uh, that that would be the only thing I could think of, like a wormhole type of thing,
Yeah.
Um, it's crazy, bro. Like if they have that technology, man, forget it, dude.
Hmm.
Like the
Yeah.
possibility.
Yeah, that is interesting. I never thought about that before, like a force field that would be able to stop like G-force. That's really interesting, actually.
Right.
So, so what do you think? Because China dominating global affairs and they're trying to become a superpower, like, and with everything that Trump is doing with Argentina, not Argentina. Well, Argentina too. Really, all of South America, and I was going to say Venezuela and Iran. Like, I think I'm pretty sure that he's going to do something with Brazil and Colombia too. And I know China's really heavily involved in Brazil as well. What do you think? Is like, why do you think that he's taken his time so sweetly with Iran right now? Do you think there's a reason for that?
Well, there's two things. One, I know some of the guys around him, and I can't say their names or say what I know or don't know, right? Without having red flags go all over the place. But there is a train of thought that some of the people that briefed him in swore there would never be land troops needed, but that's not true, right? The reality is you would need the Persians to step up and be trained. And who does that? Well, our Green Berets do that with ODA teams. And the problem is you're not going to do it without being seen now, right?
Mm,
Now, we gave weapons to the Kurds and then they stole them. And the Kurds, the reason they did that, I believe, was because Obama fucked them in our last battle with ISIS. Basically, I don't know if you remember, but Turkey was shooting the Kurds also. And because we didn't want to rough up our relationship with Turkey, being that they're NATO, we let those Kurds get killed. So I think that was a snub because of that.
mm,
So now there's $100 million worth of AK 47s and MP4s and shit that Persians never got.
yeah.
Someone's got to, I would say you got to take a city or two
Mm,
and create a green zone
mm,
and then start a because guess what? If if the prince wants to go there, he's gonna get killed, bro.
yeah, exactly.
Not gonna happen. Like so, somewhere there was a definite breakdown in the long term intel. The resolve of these guys, they're terrorists, bro. What do you mean? They'll just sit out and wait while you drain them. Russia will sneak shit in for them. China too, right? The question is, how long can they do that? Literally, there's no guns in the public in Iran. Iran, rather.
Yeah,
In other words, the only people that have guns are like goat herders, bro,
yeah.
for shooting. It's like seriously.
Mm,
So they don't have the substance to actually have a real revolution.
mm,
And that in itself is the issue. Now, what I heard was we're going to take Karg Island and a couple of other islands and use the UAE also because their nuclear plant was bombed like a week ago and take over the total control of those islands, which then completely controls the refinery aspect of that oil. The other thing that Trump did that was a great strategic move was when Lloyd's of London said, hey, we're not going to insure any of these companies, the United States is picking up the insurance. The problem is nobody is looking to go past these islands because of Iran's small boats. And so they're never getting to our blockade to even go through into the Gulf of Oman and then out into the Indian Ocean. So that was a serious blunder, in my opinion, right? Because just like we talked about Putin, not knowing that they were running tanks down into a thaw out in their own terrain, right? And that's the problem with a lot of these upper echelon officials and brass in our government and military. And again, I'm sure there are plenty of people giving him incredible insight and advice. But you will not win a war with just air power, bro. It's never happened. Never ever gonna happen. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I agree
we
with that.
we need ops. Like what's gonna happen next? They're gonna get Castro. Notice they just indicted him.
Yeah.
They're gonna go right up like we did Maduro, bro.
Mm.
The CIA just met there last week, bro. So that's happening, and we're gonna have Cuba, and we're gonna get Colombia. It's all gonna fall under what I talked about in that old Amero system. It's gonna be the same fucking plot, bro,
Yeah.
and it should be. It
Mm.
absolutely should be. You know,
Yeah.
um, but unfortunately, you need special forces in a different way on the ground, at least around the shoreline, and develop green zones and try to what people in Trump's ear are trying to get them to believe is that this new regime are less oppressive.
Mm.
They're less crazy, they're less caliphate. But that's not true, bro. They're all
No.
cut from the same grain mentality. They were killers, bro. They were a fucking conquering force.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. you know? So they're not the same as Saudi Arabians, and people don't realize the difference between the Shia and the Sunnis and how there's different rifts even within the sections of Islam also.
Hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. It's like, I mean, like, there's this regime. I mean, they're just the exact same thing as the Ayatollah. They might be smart enough to lie about their radicalness for now because they feel like they're. I mean, why wouldn't they? They're in a point of desperation. You're going to kill them if they don't. They have to find a way to try to maneuver themselves out of that situation. But what really is weird for me too is like, why is it like the UN calling them a civil rights, like giving them the vice chair for women's rights and the vice presidency for trying to get rid of nukes across the whole world? Like, what is that about? Like,
Bro, you can't make it up, dude.
really?
You can't, bro. The UN is useless, dude.
Mm-hmm.
They really are. It's completely useless. I think it all ties down to the left thinking ideology infected the whole world. That's why the UK is losing its identity, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like my ex-wife works for a Korean doctor. The Korean doctor takes his family, who are all American, back to Korea once a year for like a month so that they don't lose their culture. But if you said that as American or England,
Mm-hmm.
you'd be called a supremacist, bro.
Yeah, for real.
You know, it's crazy to me. And we have that issue with the United States being a by and large Christian founded country, but at the same time, an absence of religion that would control the country. And I think that topic confuses both sides,
Yeah.
you know, because it's been pushed politically across the board. And really all they're saying is just don't let your politics and religion influence one or the other when it comes to decision making. But for someone who's diehard in their faith, whether they're a Muslim or whether they're a Catholic, that's hard to say to them, bro.
Yeah.
You know,
It's really just straight up. I mean, they're. I don't know what it is about Islam specifically, but it's like it doesn't matter what you try to do with those radical Islamicist jihadis. They're just like they're so it's like a bed bug or a tick stuck into something. They're so embedded into this idea that you can literally, and I think that's one of the things that the world is seeing right now. You could have the entire war completely go against you and not in your favor, but you're so what? It's like I don't even see it. Like everything's going great. What are you talking about? Because Allah's gonna cause us to win. Like that's crazy.
but they have so there's a substrate in Islam called taqiyya,
Hmm.
And what that is, it's like an ode that allows you to send people into a rabbit hole. You can lie in a sense of a word for the cause of protecting your secrets. And Mandela used that very
Hmm.
eloquently.
Oh
He
yeah.
was a piece of shit. These rich liberals never even saw it,
Yeah.
Um, but that is the Islamic faith, by and large, is a conquering religion with the aims of caliphate and control through Sharia law. It's
Hmm.
that simple. It really is that simple, bro.
Yeah,
Like
it is.
you could see it with Saladin in Israel. You saw it with the Ottoman Empire. If you look at a map now, they're all over the world and creating mini caliphates everywhere.
Hmm.
Their own force as Islamics, where you can't even tell if it's an NYPD car. That's a problem, bro.
Yeah.
How did again goes back to the Soros people funding October 7th and further when
Mm.
I said that they had signs and balloons and fucking tents with logos on them. This is stuff you were prepared for.
Yeah.
All right. And that's the same thing in regards to where Islamic fundamentalism is going long term.
Yeah.
That's what they believe.
Yeah.
100%. It's crazy. And the other thing, they believe that the surahs, which are chapters in the Quran, that the Quran is a re-revelation of what we got wrong in Judaism and Christianity in the
Hmm.
Old and New Testament.
Yeah.
And I would argue that it was a complete farce aimed at trying to create a relevancy
Mm.
because the sort of control that Christianity developed through Roman Catholicism and really by and large Judaism. Not that it's controlled to an extent because there are Jews that aren't religious, but you didn't break those rules, especially the Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that without Hebrew, without Judaism, without Abraham, that none of this exists at all.
Yeah.
That's even Islam wouldn't exist without
Yeah.
Abraham. So it's crazy that we're still fighting over all this, thousands of years later. But I don't see it ending anytime soon, other than what Trump's doing by creating a democratic, more capitalistic based Middle East, which Europe then becomes the Islamic faith, right? What if Europe becomes the heavily inundated Islamic terrorist pitch of the world, and the Middle East, the origin of it, becomes much better?
That's so weird, isn't it?
Crazy. It could happen, though.
Yeah, it feels like it's like jujitsu or something. They're like switching places on each other. It's really weird.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Trump went in there, bro, and took a shot. He took a major shot, bro, and changed everything fundamentally. And then he just sit there like now. Think of what's different. He's literally sits at that desk every day and has a whole press conference, bro. Today they had Kroger, Stop and Shop, all the major shopping companies and refrigerant companies because during the Biden admin they banned refrigeration from being used long term, saying that it was an environmental issue. So they're going to stop that law. Lee Zeldin is pushing it, but they had every single owner of shopping marts in the world in his office today, explaining why these new refrigerators don't even keep the food cold. So you want to shot with technology because of the environment, but the refrigerant is kept enclosed. If it was leaking R12 in the air around your food, yeah, we have a problem, bro.
Yeah.
You know, or if you overregulate it, you're never given the place a fighting chance to correct the issue when it's found.
I mean, that's insane. Like
Yeah, bro.
stopping food from being refrigerated long term, like that is
Yeah,
crazy, man.
yeah. And Kroger said that it'll save about 1.3 billion a year now that they can use the old stuff again, basically R12 and R134A as the refrigerant. And when it goes bad, you recycle it and they reuse it, bro. You're not throwing cans of it out in the fucking dump,
Yeah.
you know. So he made a lot of sense, and I think that's the difference now is that Trump is able to make more sense of it by having direct ebb and flow And the media has really, I don't like them much, but they've definitely changed because it's very hard to make up a lie when he's right in your face every day, bro. You know? And I think that tactic is working very well.
Yeah, I think so too. What do you think about Marco Rubio?
I love him, bro.
Yeah,
That guy's like fucking plastic, man. He's everywhere, bro.
yeah,
He really is, dude. Like, and I really think you could be seeing your next president, dude.
yeah.
Honestly, because I hear that JD Vance might not run.
Really?
That's what I heard. I don't know for a fact or not. I know that both of them have said this is not the time to talk. That we're partners in the in this admin, which both of them accredited have said that they're all team Trump. Uh, by the way, a Trump 28 is not out of the question.
Yeah,
There's ways to do that. Again, I don't know that it's the right way to do it, but again, speaking like I did earlier, one of the problems with American politics is the stuff that's enacted in one presidency doesn't stay around long enough to have the impact to sustain long enough.
hmm
Don't you find it funny we're always arguing every 4 years?
yeah. I agree with that too because it's yeah, you never would. It's almost asinine to think that you would be able to get anything done long term when you can uproot the foundation every 4 years.
Bro, impeaching a guy twice, dude, with fake bullshit?
hmm
That's crazy scary, bro. There has to be something passed to stop that at least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to. If you don't do anything, and that's my biggest thing. And I think that Trump is obviously, there's no way that he would be dumb enough not to realize now, especially that you have to set up guardrails to stop this nonsense from ever happening again. You can't have people doing this to presidents just because you don't like what they say or you don't agree with them politically. That's the whole point of a president. You can't have rogue
Yep.
judges. You can't have, and it's even been more than two impeachments now. There's been even more than that, and they're talking about impeaching him again. You can't have this kind of insanity, complete, who knows how many assassination attempts, and we still don't really know where any of them are coming from. We don't understand any of that. I think, and I think Trump 2028, that's what I prefer to happen. I would rather have Trump just stick around for another 4 years before he hands it off to JD or Marco or whoever it may be. My thing with JD too is like, I mean, no offense. I don't hate JD Vance. He hasn't given me a reason to dislike him. But my thing was just that the way everybody jumped on that bandwagon just because he was the vice president. Like, because the same people that did that when Mike Pence first came around, they were like, woohoo,
Right.
yes, Mike Pence. And then after, like, he had 4 whole years with Trump, and right there at the end, they hate him now. And then in
Right.
4 minutes, you're like endorsing JD Vance to be the next one to take over. I just didn't agree with that. Like, you got to wait for this guy to pull out. You got to see what happens with him before you start making crazy things like this. Marco's been around a little while. We know what he's like. You know,
Yeah, man. He's definitely got a good shot, bro.
you think Ron DeSantis comes back into it?
Nah.
Mhm.
I mean, he might. It's going to be a primary. He could, but I don't think he's the guy. Not with the success that JD and Marco can claim after all this.
Yeah. And
You know,
what about Pete Hegseth? Do you think he'll ever try to run?
nah, I don't think so.
Just a straight
I
military guy.
think, yeah, I think Pete is he's doing great, and sometimes it's good to have someone who just has the balls to wherewithal, right?
Mm,
But I think the presidency is a bit over the hill for him as far as height. You know, even Mike Flynn, right? Like we had the Mike Flynn crowd, and I follow Mike. I've had several spaces on X where I've talked directly with his personal assistant. His name is Chad. He goes by Thugzilla on X. Great guy. In fact, one night during the election, there was a rumor that the Hells Angels were riding out to fucking Denver to fix the fucking crime by the MS-13 and Peruvian gangs and shit. and I may or may not have ties to this group. And what I noticed that they had last year's Sturgis rally ride, and some fuck made a video that went viral. So I spoke to this guy Chad. I said, "Listen, you got to tell Gunther to take that post down, bro." And like 15 minutes later, Mike Flynn, Gunther, and Chad all took it down, and they messaged me saying thanks for the heads up and info. The point is that was a rare case of where, like I said before, some people don't want to come back and fix what they said, but these guys took ownership of it. But where I'm going with Mike Flynn is there's so much. Oh, he's the guy to break out of the glass jar when the battle starts. There's a reason that Trump doesn't have him around right now.
Yeah.
Now, whatever that reason is, we don't know, but I could surmise why. And again, he's one of the guys that was pushed into his face by Paul Manafort, actually. And then look what happened. He didn't know that they were under investigation already. And Obama told Trump in the first meeting, don't hire this guy, and here's why. Now, I'm not saying he had to listen to Obama or that Obama had good advice. I'm just simply saying fucking that guy was already had the third eye on him, bro, by the agencies.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, these outlying factors are always in every administration, the Kissinger effect, right? Where there's always this hand around a presidency every single time, bro.
Mm-hmm.
And that stopped in this admin with Trump. Very different. Because look, Sessions, he sucked moose dick. Nobody had the balls to do the right thing. And that came from complacency, really. And now he sees it, I think, crystal clear. His mission was to come true on his campaign promises and then take advantage of the war faction that's happening now and push the tariffs, bro. And those three things, if you focus on it hard enough, will fundamentally, what we're really trying to do is change the United States from every motherfucker being dependent on us, because that system can't work forever. That's really what's happening on face value, It's a complete reset, if you will. And because we have enough money to do it, is why it's being pulled off.
Yeah. I think we're going to do it, though. I really think we're actually going to make it happen. I think it's going to be a success for real.
I believe so, bro. I really do.
I guess we'll end it here because we've already been going for like 2 hours or whatever. So like, is there anything like any final thoughts or anything you wanted to anything you wanted to promote or anything like that or whatever?
So a couple things. I dabble in the music and TV as well. I got something big coming out with one of my Freemason brothers. It's a TV show we're doing. I can't announce that yet, but you can look for that. You'll start seeing the promo for that. I have a band called Bigfoot is Real, one word. It's an EDM reggae rocksteady band. And then myself and a couple A-list singers and R&B guys are going to do an 8-track rendition album called Essential Renditions. It's remakes of like Seven Spanish Angels, Redemption Song. On Redemption Song, Rohan Marley's going to play the guitar. It's going to be something crazy. And then I have a single coming out called Chasing Stars. It's a country EDM track, all original music. That'll be out in about 3 or 4 weeks. It's being mastered as we speak. And pretty much, man, that's it, dude. I'm going to keep growing my starforcehh.com, which I have the URL pointed right to my Instagram because of how fast it's growing. So, every day a new thing. I wake up every day like the Phoenix, bro, from my life of adaptation because of broken marriage and shit like that. That's my gift, bro, is networking and adaptation.
Yeah.
And
Well, obviously you're good at it. I mean, you seem to have been able to network with a lot of high profile people. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
yeah, some people, like, I brought my daughters this year. They met them too, but last year I brought them down to Rohan Marley's house in Miami. When you talk about it, friends and family, people are weird, bro. Your biggest supporters aren't going to be your family in life. It's just that simple, or your friends. And a couple things happen, like basically people feel like you owe them something sometimes. And, you got to just stay focused and steadfast into what it is that you're doing in life. and remain focused, bro. That's pretty much the story of it all.